The slow, rhythmic beep of the monitor was the first thing I heard before the world snapped back into focus. Afternoon light sliced through the blinds in uneven stripes, painting jail bar shadows across the white hospital blanket pulled tight to my chest. I could taste antiseptic in the back of my throat and feel the stiff gauze taped over my shoulder. It was that special kind of quiet hospitals specialize in, too clean, too rehearsed, like the moment right before someone slides the knife in with a smile. Nurse Cora moved into view with her calm, deliberate steps. She checked the 4-line, glanced at the machines, then looked me dead in the eye. Vitals steady. Your HOA president and her husband are on their way up, she said, the words carrying the same weight as a storm warning. I nodded, even though my stomach twisted. Surviving the crash was one thing. Sitting across from Meredith Blake and Richard while hooked to machines was another nightmare entirely. Before the accident, those two had a gift for twisting every situation, good or bad, into something that served their version of community standards. I remembered the call from attorney Nora Vance 2 hours before the crash, her voice brisk but warm. I have news about your grandfather Harlan's estate. We should meet in person. I'd left the house with that sentence echoing, already imagining how I'd tell the neighborhood I was the new owner of his corner lot home. Now, lying here, I knew the conversation would be nothing like I pictured. The door swung open without a knock. Meredith entered first, heels clicking like a gavel, eyes scanning the room the way she scanned lawns for blade-length violations. Richard followed, gaze locking onto the small plastic bag of my belongings on the counter, wallet, phone, the brass key ring that held Grandpa Harlan's safe deposit box key. We came as soon as the board heard. Meredith said, tone syrupy neutral, not a drop of warmth. She didn't ask about the pain or the scans. Where's the safe deposit key from your grandfather's box? The covenants are very clear. Section 4.2.1 requires active management of any property when the owner is temporarily incapacitated. I blinked once, steadying my voice. Nice to see you too, Meredith. Richard stepped closer, softer, but just as pointed. It's important we keep everything in a safe place for the community. You've been through so much. Aminder's words floated up. When people show you who they are, believe them the first time. I took in their urgency, their total lack of interest in anything except that key. The crash wasn't the real shock. This was. I have it, I said simply, offering nothing more. They exchanged the kind of glance that's less about love and more about calculating next quarter's fines. I decided right then to play defense with silence. Let them fill the air. Let them assume the pain meds had me foggy. Cora returned, adjusting monitors with the precision of someone building a shield. Meredith and Richard drifted toward the window, whispering in low tones. Even without hearing the words, their body language screamed impatience and strategy. My phone vibrated under the blanket, subtle but insistent. When they stepped out for a call, I grabbed it. The HOA board group chat, Neighbors First, was exploding. Isla, Meredith's right-hand board member, had posted a bulleted list of responsible ways to manage the Vale property during recovery. Another board member chimed in, if she doesn't pull through, this gets way easier. Laughing emojis followed. No one corrected him. No one asked how I was. My chest tightened. Hands cold, but steady, I screenshot everything and forwarded to a secure email I kept exactly for moments like this. This wasn't shock. It was confirmation. By the time they returned, phones safely tucked away, I kept my tone light. You all seem awfully confident about my property. Meredith tilted her head, feigning confusion. I don't know what you mean, dear. Painkillers can make people imagine all sorts of things. Richard added the concerned husband mask that never reached his eyes. We just want what's best for the neighborhood. I smiled faintly. Maybe. Or maybe I'm just paying attention. There's an old saying, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. I wasn't giving them second chance. Cora met my eyes over the monitor, her expression neutral but her gaze steady, a quiet acknowledgement that she'd seen and heard enough. The door opened again and Nora stepped in, leather folio under her arm. The air shifted instantly. Even the monitors seemed to slow. Meredith's mouth twitched in an attempted smile. They clearly hadn't expected official backup tonight. Nora greeted me warmly, bypassing their tension like she'd walked through worse rooms. "I'd like a few minutes alone with my client," she said, tone leaving zero room for debate. Meredith and Richard exchanged the sharp look of people spotting an obstacle. Nora waited until the door shut, then leaned close, voice low. "There's something about the inheritance you need to know. But not here. I didn't need more. The crash hadn't broken me. It had ripped away the last polite mask, leaving the battlefield crystal clear." As their footsteps faded down the hall, I gripped the blanket tighter, mine already 3 moves ahead. They'd be back with a new tactic. The door eased open again, and Nora slipped back inside, folio tucked tight. The beeps seemed to pause. Meredith and Richard stiffened. I saw Meredith's mouth twitch, trying for that perfect president smile. They hadn't expected her to bring anything official. Nora placed a reassuring hand on the bed rail. "What I'm about to say will change everything." I looked from her calm face to the Blakes. Meredith's eyes narrowed like a cat spotting an open door to an unfamiliar yard. I could almost hear the unspoken question. What does she know? And how do we control it? For the first time all day, I felt the real storm settling in. Nora didn't waste time. "The probate court has finalized Harlan Vale's will. Zara, you are the sole beneficiary of his estate, including the corner lot home, liquid assets, and protective trusts totaling approximately $120 million. Meredith let out a short, brittle laugh, the sound people make when they're stalling for time. "That must be a clerical error. Harlan always believed in sharing equally with the community." Richard leaned forward, forearms on knees. "What my wife means is this kind of wealth needs collective management for the good of the neighborhood." I said nothing. "Possession is 9/10 of the law," Grandpa Harlan used to recite. Nora's eyes never left mine. "The will includes ironclad protections designed to make it nearly impossible for anyone else to claim these assets." I caught the flicker in Meredith's face, disbelief sliding into cold calculation. I'd seen that look before, the exact second she realized charm wouldn't work. Meredith's laugh dissolved into a forced smile. "Well, of course, if that's what Harlan wanted, we'll support you fully, as long as the property stays in perfect compliance." Richard's jaw tightened, muscle pulsing. Their eyes met, not mine, and in that glance past the plan, not grief, not joy. Nora shifted to logistics. All signings would happen privately in her office with witnesses. "There's no reason to rush," she added, "but also no reason to delay. We could handle this at the Blake residence," Richard suggested smoothly. "Keep things comfortable away from these sterile walls." I smiled faintly. "The hospital works just fine." I knew better than to give them home turf advantage. Meredith's voice softened, but her eyes stayed razor sharp. "We just want you to rest, dear." I mentally cataloged every tone shift, every glance. The crash left bruises, but my mind was filing everything like evidence. Nora stepped out to take a call, leaving me alone with them. For a moment, I thought they'd stay. Instead, Meredith slipped out muttering about checking on something. Minutes later, my phone lit up with her name. She was calling from the hospital lobby. "Hi, honey," she began, sugar dripping. "I just want what's best for the neighborhood. I know this must be overwhelming." Then the pivot. "Richard and I have been talking. We think it would be only fair for you to use part of those funds to pay the HOA's special assessment on the property. After everything we've done for the community, it's only right." I let the silence stretch like a rope before yanking it away. "We'll talk later," I said flatly, and ended the call. That was the first mass drop. The politeness vanished. The demand stood naked. I texted my cousin Junior. They're already circling. I lay back, staring at sunlight stripes on the ceiling. My mind replayed the day like a chessboard, the key demand, the inheritance bomb, the two-face call. Every move pointed to the same strategy. Corner me before I could think. Fine. Let them believe I was cornered. No documents would leave Nora's hands without me present. No private meetings. Every interaction recorded, if possible. Grandpa Harlan's voice echoed. Never hand the keys to someone who's already tried the lock without asking. I wasn't letting them dismantle me from this bed. They thought this was a cage. They had no idea I was building a fortress. The door opened quietly. Nora slipped back in, brow furrowed. We may have to move faster. Someone already tried to request a copy of the will. No authorization. Adrenaline spiked. That was no random curiosity. It was a move. Before I could answer, the door creaked again. Meredith and Richard walked back in, smiles stretched too wide, too bright, like masks for a performance. I straightened, grip tightening on the blanket. If this is their game, I thought I'll learn the rules and then rewrite them. Meredith set her purse on the chair. Out of the corner of my eye, caught the sharp corner of a manila envelope peeking out. It wasn't hers. I knew exactly what it might hold. It was late. The hallway lights had dimmed to that fake sleep glow hospitals use to pretend the world rests. I almost believed Meredith and Richard might skip a night visit when the door pushed open. Meredith entered first, smile stretched thin like she'd rehearsed it in the elevator mirror. Richard trailed, glancing at his watch before even looking at me. Their voices were soft, but the undercurrent cut like hidden fines. "Still awake?" Meredith asked lightly, setting her purse down with deliberate slowness. "Barely," I replied, watching her eyes scan every surface except my face. Richard stood at the foot of the bed, hands in pockets. "We didn't want to bother you too much earlier." Nurse Cora lingered near the monitors, pretending to chart, but clearly taking the room's temperature the same way I was. The air felt brittle. One wrong word and it would shatter. Meredith broke the silence like a hammer. "You're a curse to this neighborhood, Zara. Everything bad that's happened started when you inherited that property." My pulse stayed steady. Richard, sensing the direct hit, softened it. "Trouble just follows you, honey. Always has." Cora's pen froze on her clipboard. Even the machines seemed to hold their breath. I looked at them level. "I survived a crash today, and that's what you choose to say." Neither flinched. In that moment, I understood with brutal clarity. The accident wasn't the deepest wound. Being painted as the neighborhood villain was. Cora adjusted my blanket with quiet care. Meredith suddenly needed water and headed for the door. Richard followed. When they were gone, Cora turned to me. "You didn't deserve that." "I know," I said evenly. Inside, I was locking the words away like ammunition. "You can't change the wind, but you can adjust the sails," Grandpa Harlan's favorite line. I planned to do exactly that. I grabbed my phone and typed to Junior. She said it out loud in front of a witness. Then I stared at the ceiling, memorizing Cora's expression, concern mixed with resolve. This moment would be both scar and weapon. Later the phone buzzed again. Isla's name lit the screen with screenshots from another board chat I wasn't in. One by one I saw every violation they'd pinned on me. The job I lost during the merger, the car accident from 3 winters ago, the HOA meeting I'd missed because of pneumonia. Each followed by mocking comments and self-righteous agreement. The final line from a cousin on the board, "She's cursed." Meredith and Richard were right. I read it twice, not from shock, but to feel how cold it was. Pull steady. I saved every image into a hidden folder labeled insurance. This wasn't disagreement. It was coordinated narrative warfare. The door opened again. They returned with paper cups of water, faces reset to polite neutrality. "Did you get some rest?" Meredith asked, voice smooth as fresh paint overwrought. "A little," I said, giving nothing extra. Richard nodded. "That's good. Healing takes time." I answered with minimal small talk. The less I gave, the more they filled with their own assumptions. I wasn't handing them a reaction to weaponize. Eleanor Roosevelt's words rang in my head. "No one can make you feel inferior without your consent." I wasn't signing that tonight. Let them think I was unaffected. Overconfidence breeds carelessness. Richard's phone rang. He stepped into the hallway. I caught fragments. Documents before she signs lien the property. Cora moved closer and slid a sticky note onto my tray, her personal number. If you need a witness, call me, she whispered. I nodded, tucking it away. For the first time in hours, real hope warmed me. Not everyone was buying the story they were selling. Meredith leaned over to straighten my blanket. We'll be back first thing. I watched them leave, then whispered to myself, tomorrow I start turning this around. The door opened at 6 sharp. No knock, just quiet invasion. Isla stood in the doorway, large manila folder in hand, expression flat. Meredith followed, immaculate as always, Richard at her shoulder. This wasn't a visit. It was an ambush. They didn't greet me. Isla's mouth curved into something resembling a smile that never reached her eyes. Cora hovered by the monitors, close enough to witness. I stayed silent. The first to speak in a negotiation often loses. Isla stepped forward, pulling papers from the folder. The rustle sounded louder than it should. This is just to make sure things are handled while you recover, Meredith began, voice dripping maternal concern she usually saved for charity luncheons and violation notices. She produced a tissue, dabbing at nothing. Isla dropped the document on my lap. Power of attorney, bold title. Richard tapped the signature line. You sign this, focus on resting. We'll take care of the property for the community. I scanned the dense legal language. Stripped of politeness, it gave them sweeping control over the house, accounts, everything. If you trust me enough to inherit, I said evenly, looking straight at Meredith, you can trust me to manage it. Her smile tightened. You're making this harder than it has to be. I slid the papers back without looking again. No, I'm making it exactly as clear as it needs to be. Cora stepped between us under the guise of checking vitals, cutting off further pressure. Outbursts here would be ammunition proving I was unstable. Instead, I let silence press until they shifted uncomfortably. They wanted me unsure. I wanted them wondering if I had more leverage than they thought. As they gathered their things, Meredith lifted her purse. A glint of silver caught my eye. Grandpa Harlan's engraved pocket watch, the one he gave me at college graduation. It had been in my apartment before the crash. Why is Grandpa's watch in your bag? I asked, voice calm but unmistakable. She froze just long enough to confirm the theft. I found it in storage. Thought I'd keep it safe for you. I didn't challenge the lie. I filed it with the rest. If they'd steal that, they'd steal anything. When they left, I texted Nora. They tried POA this morning. Also took the watch. Her reply, do not sign anything. I'll arrange security. I slipped my belongings envelope under the pillow. Possessions are fleeting. Principles are permanent. I started a new note titled Lines They've Crossed. The watch went at the top. Every incident was another brick in the wall I was building. Cora returned with another note. I saw her take it. I'll testify if needed. Gratitude, yes, but also recognition that witnesses like her could tip the scale. My phone buzzed. Isla's name glowed. You're forcing our hands, Zura. We can't let you ruin the neighborhood. I stared at it, then locked the screen. This was no longer about money. It was about control, who held it, and how far they'd go. The door opened without warning. Meredith and Richard strode and dressed like they were attending a board meeting. Polished shoes, sharp expressions. Nora was already seated by my bed, papers balanced on her lap. She didn't stand, but one eyebrow rose. You didn't mention company, she murmured. I hadn't known either. The air changed the way clouds blot out sun. Cora stayed close, updating charts, but clocking every detail. Richard started with fake small talk about hospital food. While he chatted, Meredith set her bag on the chair. I caught the scrape of a folder sliding against leather. Cream stock, heavy, monogrammed HV in the corner. Grandpa Harlan's personal stationery. The site hit like a violation notice. Is that from Grandpa? I asked casually. Meredith's hand stilled for half a beat before she shoved it deeper. Just some old paperwork. I held her gaze, then let it drop outwardly. Inside, I logged it in the ledger of secrets. If there's something of his meant for me, I said after a pause, I'd like to read it. He always made things clearer. Her lips tightened. We'll talk about it later. Richard jumped in smoothly. Right now, let's focus on handling things as a neighborhood family. I kept eye contact with Nora. She gave the tiniest nod. She'd seen it too. Secrets have weight. Sooner or later they slip. Before silence stretched too far, another man in a tailored suit walked in. Their attorney, here to help with the transition. He carried a single sheet on a clipboard, smiling the polished way lawyers do when selling something useless. This is just temporary authorization, so the board can handle urgent matters while you recover. It'll save everyone's stress. I held out my hand. The language wasn't temporary. It was sweeping, more dangerous than the POA attempt. Full authority over finances, assets, even medical decisions. Stress, I said, handing it back, comes from giving the wrong people the wrong keys. The lawyer chuckled like I was joking. Meredith and Richard didn't. Cora shifted closer like a quiet wall. I folded the paper neatly and set it aside. Nothing will be signed until my attorney reviews it. Meredith laughed, brittle. With a neighborhood family. No need for that. Exactly why I'm being careful, I replied. The lawyer's smile faltered. Nora's didn't. She looked quietly pleased. I kept my tone level, giving them no outburst to twist. When they left, Nora leaned in. We'll talk tonight privately. I nodded, the image of that monogrammed folder burned in. If Grandpa wrote to me, it might explain why I was sole heir and why they were fighting so hard to box me out. My phone buzzed. Junior, I think I found something in Grandpa's old study. Call me. The room sharpened. Whatever she had, it wouldn't stay buried, and neither would I. The morning felt different. No early invasion. The hallway hummed quietly. Cora entered slower than usual, glancing at the door before moving close. I overheard something last night, she whispered. You need to know before they return. She caught Meredith and Richard at the nurse's station, discussing how to frame me as too impaired to manage the property. Classic HOA move to justify a lien or forced sale. I can write an incident report, she offered, about the curse comment, the watch, everything. I stared, stunned by the risk she was taking. A nurse on record could change everything in court. You have more power than you think, she said firmly. Use it before they do. Thank you, I replied, meaning it. This was solid ground inside these walls. When she left, I returned a missed call from Thelma Grant, Grandpa Harlan's old neighbor. Her voice was warm, older. Your grandfather told me exactly why he left everything to you. He said you understand value beyond money. That's not something everyone in the neighborhood can claim. She described how Meredith and Richard had visited years ago, trying to convince Harlan to put the house in their names for board convenience. He'd refused flat. He'd rather leave it to someone who respected the work it took to earn it. That was you. The validation hit hard. This was proof I hadn't imagined his faith. If you ever need me to say that officially, I will. I texted Nora about Thelma's offer. Her reply, every witness matters. Lock them in early. In my head, I mapped the network. Nora on legal, Cora as hospital witness, Thelma as character witness. This wasn't just holding the line anymore. I was building an offensive. From now on, every call recorded, every scrap saved. I pulled up notes titled non-negotiables. No signing without counsel. No private meetings on their turf. Document everything. Michelle Obama's words echoed. You can't make decisions based on fear. I wasn't letting fear dictate. Looking at the list, I felt the shift from reacting to dictating terms. This was my life, my inheritance, and it would be handled on my terms. I even pictured Meredith's face when she realized every quiet move had been tightening the net. The phone rang. Junior, I'm in the old study. You need to hear this, something your HOA president doesn't know about. Pulse jumped. What kind of something? Not over the phone, but it's tied to what you've been looking for. Cora returned. Your visitors just arrived. They brought their lawyer again. I ended the call, sat up straighter. Whatever walked through that door, I was ready. By evening, the community hall buzzed like a hive. Folding chairs packed every corner. Meredith and Richard sat front row under fluorescent lights, perfectly framed. Meredith wore slate gray jacket like armor. Richard, draped an arm over the next chair, claiming space. Isla scrolled her phone like she had better places to be. The meeting started with routine budget updates, the kind that glaze eyes. Then Meredith raised her hand. "I'd like to address a matter relevant to our community." Her words were masterclass innuendo, painting me unstable, hinting at my difficult recovery, questioning whether the estate was in responsible hands. I kept my face still, scanning until I spotted Thelma in back, arms folded, gaze fixed. Nora stood near the door, ready. When Meredith finished, I rose. "May I respond?" The chair nodded. I walked to the mic, pulled out my phone. "I'd like you all to hear something." I pressed play. Meredith's voice filled the room, crystal clear. "You're a curse to this neighborhood, Zara. Everything bad started with you." Richard's quiet agreement followed. Whispers rippled like wind through tall grass. I let silence stretch. This is how they speak when they think no one is listening. From a corner, I saw Isla freeze. Meredith opened her mouth, but the chair raised a hand. "She has the floor." I reached into my bag and tore open the sealed envelope. Grandpa Harlan's handwriting looped sure across the page. I read aloud. Praise for my integrity, the hours we spent maintaining the property together, his trust in my judgment. Then the line that made Meredith's jaw lock. How he'd refused to put the house in their names because of past conduct inconsistent with true stewardship of the community. When I finished, I folded the letter. Grandpa knew the truth long before today. Thelma stood, voice steady, recounting Harlan's words and his pride in leaving the legacy to someone who valued it. Cora's voice cut in from the side. "I was in the hospital room when she was called a curse. I also saw the heirloom watch taken." Murmurs swelled into a shifting tide. I thanked them both, not for defending me, but for defending truth. Nora scanned the crowd like a jury consultant. Meredith and Richard sat stiff, earlier confidence drained. When the meeting adjourned, neighbors approached with handshakes and quiet nods. Outside, the night air was sharp. Nora walked beside me. "We turn the tide tonight, but they won't retreat quietly." I reached my car just as a dark SUV rolled past. Tinted window lowered an inch. A voice from inside. "You're making dangerous enemies." Then it vanished. I stood there, heart steady, not from calm but from certainty. This had just escalated beyond bylaws. I woke in my apartment to coffee scent and the replay of the HOA meeting. The faces shifting when the recording played, the ripple when Harlan's letter landed. Relief lasted exactly one breath. Winning one battle doesn't end the war. Nora's voicemail waited. "We need to meet this morning. Private. Bring everything." I spread witness notes across the coffee table, underlining gaps, noting vulnerabilities. By the time Nora arrived, the living room looked like a war room. "Action plan," she said, taking the opposite chair. We combed through statements. Cora's offer on the curse and watch. Thelma's confirmation of Harlan's intent. The notarized letter now indexed as evidence. Her plan was aggressive. File preemptive motions to block any asset transfers or liens. I added, "We control the narrative outside the courtroom too. Those seeds about my stability need ripping out." We shook on it. No more waiting. For now on, we moved first. My phone rang, the bank manager. "We'd appreciate you coming in today to clarify account authority questions." Warning bells. Nora's jaw tightened. "They're trying to slide something through." "Let's go." In the glass-walled office, I saw them through the window. Meredith in pale blue jacket, Richard leaning back like he owned the place. The manager rose. Meredith started before I sat. "We're here to help manage things for Zara while she recovers. The inheritance is substantial. It would be safer with joint board control." I let her finish, then place my ID, certified documents, and Harlan's letter copy on the desk. My grandfather's instructions were explicit. Sole authority rests with me. The manager's posture shifted as the weight registered. In that case, nothing to adjust. Richard grumbled about a misunderstanding. Meredith didn't hide her glare. I leaned back. "While we're here, I'd like safeguards, password verification on all accounts, No third-party authorizations unless I'm physically present. And written confirmation today. Nora added the restrictions. 15 minutes later, I walked out with signed papers. Control the keys, Harlan once said, and you control the castle. In the car, Nora exhaled. They're running out of moves. I allowed a small smile. That's when desperate players get reckless. Junior called. Urgent. You need to see what I found hidden under the floorboards. Adrenaline surged. Is it something they've been hunting? I don't think they even know it's there. We headed out. 2 blocks later, I spotted the black sedan in the mirror, following every turn. Nora saw it too. This wasn't coincidence. 2 days later in probate court, the air smelled of old paper and polished wood. High-backed chairs full. Meredith and Richard sat opposite, composed like magazine covers. Junior nodded from the back. The judge noted public interest due to neighborhood prominence. Their attorney rose first, questioning the will's validity. Nora began with Thelma on the stand, swearing Harlan's words, how he'd refused the Blakes' request to transfer the house. Cora followed, calm and clinical, describing the curse comment and the stolen watch. Their attorney tried to discredit her. Cora didn't flinch. I know exactly what I saw and heard. When Nora looked my way, I took the stand with the sealed letter. My voice steady, I read Harlan's praise for my integrity, our work together, his certainty I would preserve what he built, then the explicit warning against Meredith and Richard interfering based on past conduct. The room went silent. Meredith stared straight ahead, jaw tight. Richard shifted, eyes anywhere but me. Nora stood again, holding the smaller envelope. Your Honor, this is the protective clause signed and notarized by Harlan Vale. It expressly and irrevocably prohibits Meredith and Richard Blake from exercising any control, claim, or authority over the estate or its assets. Gasps rippled. Even the judge's eyebrows lifted. Nora laid out its legal force. The judge scanned, then looked up. This settles the matter conclusively. From my seat, I saw Meredith's defiance crack into resignation. The gavel hadn't fallen yet, but the outcome was carved in stone. In the hallway, a man I didn't recognize brushed past, slipping a folded note into my hand. I waited until he disappeared to open it. Harlan left something else. They don't know about it. But I do. Pulse quickened. I slid it into my pocket. This wasn't over. The battlefield had simply moved. The morning came quiet. I stepped onto the balcony, the suburban street stretching below. The distance from hospital bed to here felt impossible. Survival was the first victory. Freedom was the real one. On the counter sat the stranger's note, an address in the old neighborhood. Today was about cutting the last threads. In the neutral conference room, Nora stacked documents. Final terminations of joint accounts, removal from any co-signed deeds, the last vestiges of shared ties. The door opened. Meredith entered first, perfume preceding her, Richard in navy blazer. They looked ready for negotiation, not closure. Junior sat at the far end, silent witness. Nora began without ceremony. These documents permanently separate all financial and property interests. Meredith leaned back. That's drastic. We could work out something mutually beneficial. Richard added, you're talking about burning bridges, Zura. Neighborhood doesn't do that. I'll let them exhaust every angle, pleading, reasoning, hinting at obligations. When they stopped, I reached for the first document and signed slowly, meeting Meredith's eyes. This isn't revenge. It's self-preservation. Her lips thinned. Ungrateful. Loyalty, I replied evenly, is earned, not inherited. One by one, signatures landed. The bank rep stamped each page. Effective immediately and irreversible. The words hit Meredith harder than anything. For the first time, she looked unsure. Richard glanced at her, but neither spoke. I gathered my copies and stood. Thank you for coming. Meredith rose too. We can still talk. No, I said, polite but final. We're done talking. Outside, the late sun hit my face, and something uncoiled inside. It's not the absence of chains you notice first. It's the way you can finally move. Back at the apartment, I unpacked the last boxes. On a new shelf by the window, I placed Harlan's watch, polished and ticking softly. I pulled out budget notes for the charitable projects he and I had planned. The numbers were clean now. No hidden liens, no one else's name. Maya Angelou's words drifted through. I could be changed by what happens, but I refused to be reduced by it. Before sunset, I sent 2 words to every witness. Thank you. As night settled, I poured tea and unfolded the stranger's note at last. An address. Beneath it, what he left is still there. I snapped a photo and texted Nora, "We need to go tomorrow." The next morning, mist clung low. Nora met me outside, Junior already in the passenger seat. None of us spoke much. Silence felt like armor. We pulled onto a gravel track, ending at a weathered storage barn. Walter, the man from the courthouse, waited by padlocked doors. Harlan trusted me. Said if things got ugly, you'd need what's in here. He slid the key. Inside, cold air smelled of cedar and dust. A steel cabinet stood in the corner. Walter handed me the second key. "Only you open this." The door swung wide, revealing stacked ledgers, sealed envelopes, and a small black case. Inside the case, a flash drive, an envelope marked in Harlan's handwriting. For Zura. I slipped the drive into my laptop. Harlan appeared healthy, voice steady. "If you're seeing this, they've made their move. And if they have, I want everyone to know exactly why my will says what it does. Meredith and Richard, your patterns are clear. You take, you manipulate, and you call it community love. Zara, you've always understood value isn't just money, it's integrity. That's why everything is yours." Walter pointed to the ledgers, signed contracts, deeds, bank statements backing every claim, all notarized. Nora's voice was certain. "We'll do this publicly." By afternoon, we stood outside the courthouse. Nora had called an impromptu press conference. Reporters huddled, cameras ready. I spoke briefly, then hit play on the portable speaker. Harlan's face filled the screen, voice carrying through cold air. "This is my will, my voice, and my choice. No one else has the right to alter it." Halfway through, Meredith and Richard arrived, pace quick, but expressions tight. Cameras caught every flicker. When the video ended, I stepped back. This is my grandfather's voice and his will. Anything else is noise. Questions flew, but I turned away, leaving their silent, cornered images burned into the day. Inside, Nora filed the evidence. The judge, after review, ruled, all assets remain with Zara Ellison. All prior challenges dismissed with prejudice. The protective clause stands. Sheriff's deputies served Meredith and Richard right there with orders to vacate any claimed interest within 48 hours. They didn't speak. For once, I didn't fill the silence. That night, my apartment was full in the right way. Junior brought wine, Cora and Thelma brought food, Nora brought a grin I'd never seen in court. We ate at the kitchen table with Harlan's watch at center. I raised my glass to Harlan for seeing the truth first, and to all of you for standing when it counted. Laughter came easy. For the first time in months, we talked about anything but the fight, movies, travel, terrible recipes. Morning came with the city waking. I walked past the courthouse steps where it started. Newsstands showed my win across front pages. At the far end of the street, a moving van waited. Meredith and Richard loaded boxes, movements brisk. We didn't exchange words, just a long look that said everything about endings. As I turned toward my car, Walter appeared. Harlan would be proud, but he'd also tell you, don't stop building. I smiled, already thinking of what came next. Not for them, not for revenge. For me. They had tried to write my story. I took the pen.